G'day. Every so often I get all enthusiastic about finding better ways to store things or to arrange things just to, well, make it easier for me really. And today I'm starting off making up a new cabinet for my milling machine. Well, not really new. It's the existing cabinet, but I need to make it higher, wider and deeper, and take out the shelves and put in some drawers. So not a major change or anything like that. This particular video I deal with doing the drawers. I was given some 1.2mm thick steel from a friend, and so it covers joining that up and folding and putting some beads in and all that sort of thing. This is the cupboard. In there are a couple of shelves with angle plates and dividing heads and rotary tables and various bits and pieces and fixtures that I use in conjunction with the mill. I've decided that this way of storing things is not all that useful. I've got two shelves plus a couple of shallow drawers here, and these have got things like T-nuts and that sort of stuff in them. So what I want to do is convert this and put effectively 4 layers of drawers in there. The bottom one is going to be split because I want to have the dividing head and the rotary table in separate drawers. But that will enable me to pull them out and get better access, because one of the problems with this is that I've got all this space here, but I've only got a couple of tall things in it. I can't really do anything with that intermediate space, and even down the bottom there it's worse because half the time you can't see right down to the back. So I figure if I have drawers that I can pull out, I'll be able to get better access, better storage efficiency, and be able to see what I've actually got in there. The first thing I'm doing here is making up the drawers, and the reason for that is that this style of slide, which is the style I'm using, is not terribly forgiving width-wise. It's 13mm and plus or minus 0.5 or something like that. So rather than putting shims in things to pack out bits and pieces to make everything match, I thought what I'll try and do is make up the drawers, make them so they're all pretty much the same width across, and that way fitting the slides becomes a lot easier, and I can also then use that as a basis for making the width of the cabinet. One of the problems with welding zinc-plated material is that the zinc melts around about 300 degrees, it vaporizes at around about 700, steel melts at 1100, 1200 degrees C, and so what you're having is that when you strike an arc on this stuff, the stuff pretty much instantly vaporizes, it spits. It also throws out lots of zinc fumes, white oxide, which means you need a well ventilated area to weld the stuff in, and personally I try to avoid welding it wherever I can. This white stuff here is what people call white rust, which appears on zinc plated stuff when it starts corroding. A bit of vinegar should fix that, and so once I've got everything welded up, I'll wipe everything down with vinegar, and then I'll have to spray some zinc rich primer on this stuff just to restore the zinc coating. The reason that I persist with zinc in these sorts of cases is that you can have a space as big as a 20-cent piece or so 20mm across, without zinc on it, and the zinc is effective enough that probably protects the inside from corroding. So if I get a scratch on this, it's not going to rust away. If I had plain steel that was painted and I had a scratch, a bit of moisture got in all over. What I've done here with this one, I've attacked this with an angle grinder, and you might just be able to see there's a sort of 2 colours of metal there. There's a bright, shiny, silvery one, and then there's a duller, greyish one. And that's where I've stripped the zinc back with an angle grinder. I'm going to try doing this with the TIG in a moment, just to see whether I can get a decent weld out of it. I'm trying a number of techniques with this. This is TIG without any prep, and what I found was that zinc would spit, clog up the electrode. I'd be regrinding the electrode a lot of the time. It did weld, but not terribly nicely. And you can see too from the darker grey around the welds that that's where the zinc has actually melted back from the welding. This one here is a bit of stuff I did with stick, and I've left a little bit of the zinc oxide on there. I had to grind these down because the welds were pretty lumpy, and as you can see the arc starts and that sort of thing were a bit awful. The other thing that happens with this one is that I've managed to melt through in a couple of spots. That's not going to worry me too much. It'd be nicer if I didn't do it, of course, but that's the way it is. But that's the problem with using stick. Now if it was thicker material, I'd be blasting in there with the stick because the zinc melts away from the weld, and it actually gives you, a reasonable thing. And because the electrode is consumed, it's not a problem. This last one, once again, no particular prep, but I used some silicon bronze on there, and that was because Kevin at KSR Racing said that he did steel plates like that for floor plates with this stuff, because less heat doesn't distort as much, but it also means that less heat means you don't get the zinc getting all excited, and that seems to have worked reasonably well. The only problem with that is penetration, and I made up a test piece about that. This is the test piece I did. That's just a straight butt joint, and I've just gone along there with the silicon bronze, and that's actually brazed up quite nicely. If you look on the back, I had a gap of about 0.7 millimeters there, down to around about nothing there, and you can see that until about 0.3 or so, the stuff does actually wick through, and that's good because it means that I'm not just getting a superficial joint on the top, I'm actually getting some edge-to-edge penetration. I tried also doing a corner joint, and that again was interesting because I've got the silicon bronze actually wicking through a bit and putting a bit of a fillet on the inside. So I actually like that. That's quite a strong joint. So that could well be what I end up using for corners. It means that I don't have to worry quite so much about cleaning the zinc off, but it does give me it's a little bit lumpy, but I can dress that back a bit, but it gives me a decent joint. After a lot of cutting and folding, this is where I'm at. And bear in mind that I've got 3 of these things to make. In actual fact, I've got 4 because the one that I stick welded together I wasn't very happy with, and so I decided I might as well do another one before I got too far in. So I've got a spare to muck around with. Next thing that's going to happen is I need to fold these sides up and then just weld up the corners. One of the things that from past experience I've discovered is that even when I've got strong sides like this, and I'll have here, this middle can sag, and so if you've got drawers that are close set, that sag is sometimes enough for it to hit the next drawer out. Now I like to try and avoid that, so I've got a bead roller, and I'm going to try putting some lines through here. I should have thought of this earlier so I could put them acrosswise because that's where the slides are going to be, but I think putting them fore aft is going to be just as well, but I'll experiment a bit, and so some I'll run this way on the last sheet that I've done, which I haven't yet folded. I'll probably run them this way because I can get in without the sides on there, and we'll just see what the effect is. The other possibilities, I could have creased these. Once again, you need to think of that before you'd actually done any folding, but that was another possibility. I could probably do something like that. I may try that, but probably the bead roller is the easiest way, and all I'm doing there is increasing the depth of the sheet, with the bead, just to stiffen it up a bit. This is my bead roller. It's an old John Heine. You can still buy these new these days, but they're generally electrically powered, and I don't know whether they'd be actually as beefy as this one is. This thing weighs a ton. This is actually the first time I've used it in anger. I've had it and I've done a couple of test pieces, but this is the first time I've actually wanted to incorporate the features into something. So I've just got a rounding roller here. I've set my stop, and I'm just going to run the sheet through. I tried a piece just before doing this, and it came out a little bit lopsided, and then I realised that these rollers weren't properly aligned. So even though it looks like a simple bit of equipment, there are adjustments that you do need to make. In use, what you do is you basically wind that down onto the material, then you turn the crank down here at the other end, and that will put a bead on the sheet metal. I've put 4 beads in here, and on the piece that I had with that's one of the things that'll happen. It puts a bit of stress in the material. I think that'll go when I fold this. On the one that I hadn't folded up the corners, I've put 4 beads this way, so I'll be interested to see what happens. The last one I'm going to leave plain for 2 reasons. One is comparison, but the other one is that on that one I TIG welded the bits together, and the beads or the stitches are very close, and so I wasn't sure that I'd be able to run a bead across without, you know, running over a weld. So we'll see how all that goes. I've never stiffened a shelf like this before. I've done it before with some cross creasing, but we'll see what happens, and if worst comes to worst, I can probably work out some sort of remedial thing for that other drawer. Whether it be a stiffening piece running across, you know, just a hat section or 2. Just a quick word on bending consistency. Sometimes you get into trouble because you bend something and then you change the sequence of your bends and it grows a bit. This is the way I set up my finger brake. It's basically I put the finger a thickness back from the edge of the folder, and so when it folds up, the finger is holding the material just at the start of the bend there. Now if you think about what that means, it means that if I'm bending up a tray of some sort, maybe something like that, if I have it so I bend this side and that side that way, I'm going to get a different result than if I did it that way. So when you're doing bending, you need to, well, there's 2 things you need to do if you're using a finger brake. One of them is you need to do a couple of trial bends just to see what how much you're going to lose from the bending process. But that way you can work out where you want your side versus where the side ends up. But also when you're doing multiples of something and that dimension needs to be precise, particularly a test piece can help you, once you work out the sequence of bends, the test piece can help you get that consistency. Lots of cutting, bending and folding and rolling later, and this is the result. It's interesting, this one hasn't had any beading put in the bottom and it's sitting flat. This one, on the other hand, has, and you can see the stresses have lifted up a corner. I'll do a bit of bending on that, and once it's got stuff in it and it's on rails, it'll sit flat, because it will go that way. It's just it's in a bistable form at the moment. These have all been brazed, worked out quite nicely, and I did this by securing them to my anti-sink board here with some clamps, and then squared the corner up. So the natural state of these when they're welded is basically flat. Just looking at the shape of them here, these lips here are partly stiffening, but also they're going to overhang the rails a little bit, so hopefully stop dirt and things dropping into those quite so easily. The front and back have got these flanges on them, and that's partly to stiffen them, but I'm also going to use that on some of them to put a tray on top. So that's sort of basically a surface for a tray to run, and it's one way I've discovered with drawers for industrial stuff, that if you've got different height stuff, you're better off putting the taller stuff, say, over on one side with the shorter stuff here, and then putting another tray over the top, and that helps with your storage efficiency. Here's the finished drawer. I've ground a little bit of the braze off the sides here so the slides can go past nicely. I've made sure the sides are flat. I've got the holes drilled for the slides, and on the front I've also ground off a little bit of material so that I can have a cover piece on there that will sit flush. Now these things are all good, but the last thing I wanted to do before I concluded this bit was check the width across here, and I'm using my little caliper thingies. That one's a little tight, that one's a bit better, but the important thing is that all the drawers are the same, or if they're not, what I do is picking the bigger drawer and then shimming the slides out a little bit with a washer or two, because it wouldn't be much, only a millimetre or two, and that way I can make the drawer, or the frame that the drawer sits in, parallel, and everything you know, becomes a bit easier to make, rather than having to try and do a tapered thing or something like that. I guess when using these, I've just used them as a no-go gauge here. When using these, you need to remember to take off the dimension here, which is 50 millimeters, off this one here, which is 550. So these are all 500, probably give or take a millimeter. So that's good enough to start with. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.